Hello, welcome to another edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace reporting live here in the heart of New York City, Times Square. Recently, 5-time Grammy Award winning drummer, composer, and arranger Antonio Sanchez performed brand new music from his upcoming record, which features some very, very important stalwarts in the music world, including the great Dave Matthews, Trent Reznor, Meshell Ndegeocello, Lila Downs, just to name the endless few. Now his band is called Bad Hombre, and it features his wife Thana Alexa on vocals, Big Yuki on keyboards, and Lex Sadler on bass. Now this album is a hodgepodge of rock, funk, jazz, and world music, but the record label, Warner Brothers, is labeling this project as alternative. Now tonight you're going to see brand new exclusive footage of the brand new music. In fact, immediately after he did this set with Bad Hombre, he and his band went over to Europe and they played the new music to rave reviews. Tonight I had a chance to sit down and break bread with him in his studio to talk about this record. We talked about the role of coming outside of the jazz world to produce this project, as well as talk about and reflect on the lives of the great Chick Corea and Lyle Mays, as well as talk about his scoring this upcoming documentary, which is going to be featured on HBO, how he's being very, very, very involved with the composing part and his role as a composer. So sit back, relax, and enjoy highlights of the new music from Antonio Sanchez and his band Bad Hombre, performing live at New Blue, here on the Pace Report, here in New York City. Antonio, you know, when we last saw each other, we premiered, or you premiered the brand new music. And immediately after the New Blue performance, you and your band went and played the new music. And now you're back and the record is about to come out. How do you feel at this moment with everything in the can and all the kinks were worked out on this tour? How do you feel about the music now?
I mean, the music keeps growing. That's the cool thing. I mean, what you saw at New Blue, we hadn't played that music in, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, because we did a tour last year, the first one, and then we didn't do anything because Omicron hit and all that stuff. So when we did New Blue, we hadn't played it for a while, so it was a little rough around the edges. But then we went out on tour, and you know, that's the great thing about playing every day in a different city, in a different country, that all of a sudden the music just starts doing what it needs to do. You don't need to force. Of course, you know, I'm always thinking about ways of making it better, but the music, it just kind of takes a life of its own when you can do it every day and try different things, try new things in front of different audiences. What works, what doesn't work. So, you know, I feel so excited, and I also feel anxious for it to come out already, because, you know, it's been pushed back 4 times, this album, and there's a lot of expectation behind it. I mean, from my part at least, and from the record company and you know, my management and everybody that is trying to make things work. We're all feeling anxious for it to finally hit the streets and start doing its thing, you know, because it's such a different album for me that I have no idea what's going to happen. You know, if it was one of my other regular jazz albums that I do, you know, it's kind of predictable what's going to happen. You know, yeah, you know, people are going to listen to it, that's cool, we're going to get some gigs, but the nature of it is so different with all the guests. The music is wildly different. It's not really a jazz album, so I have no idea what it's going to do, but because of the nature of it and because of the guests in it, I'm hoping it will do something that hasn't happened in my career before. So I'm anxious and excited about it.
Why did you decide to jump the jazz world and go into a rock album? Because I always think rock and jazz are kind of hand in hand. Miles did it. Branford Marsalis did it with Buckshot LaFunk with hip hop. Mm-hmm. I mean, Ice-T did it with Body Count. And I ask you this because there's so many diverse special guests on this record that you even took them out of the rock world, and they're kind of playing jazz on this rock project.
Yeah, well, you know, it's one of the things that makes me nervous about this project is that it's hard to define, you know, because it's not fully a rock album, it's not fully a jazz album. There's hip hop elements, there's reggae elements, there's definitely rock elements. There's more openness to it. So it's hard to define, and that's one of the things that worries me the most about it, because people like to put things in a box easily. Record labels, streaming platforms, you know, what is this? This is this, or this is that. So it's a little bit of up in the air on how people are gonna receive it and people are gonna define it. But I feel like a lot of jazz musicians, not only me, but definitely, are, after they do jazz, proper jazz for a while, then I think they start feeling the itch to go back to some of the roots that were left behind, because jazz requires so much work, so much dedication, that, for example, I grew up playing rock, but then when I started getting into jazz, it was so absorbing that I had to leave everything else for jazz, to master it, to know how to play it, to make the connections, to be able to work, all that stuff. So I feel like a lot of musicians that are kind of established, they tend to be like, okay, well, maybe now I can go back and revisit some of those things that I used to love so much, before jazz, and start mixing it up with what I know now. So I feel like this is basically what I'm doing. I'm kind of going back to my roots, but seen through the lens of somebody that has played jazz for decades now, and that it feels like, okay, maybe I can afford to do this now, because I feel like I've established my voice as a jazz drummer, as a jazz composer, as a jazz musician enough so that I can kind of mess around now and start seeing what else can come out of my research in music, because to me that's what it is. You're always researching what else is out there that you haven't done, that you could do, that could be original, that could be challenging. And I realize also that I have a pretty good ear for production, because that's what I listened to for most of my life. I played a lot of jazz and I listened to a lot of jazz, but a lot of times I was playing jazz and listening to electronic music or rock or pop with this big productions that are very satisfying sonically speaking. And I think I have a good ear for that. So in this project, that was one of my main goals, to try to make a record that would be, you hear it with headphones and you're like, oh my God, there's things coming from everywhere. And using the drums as the main ingredient for that sound, the wall of sound, so to speak. A lot of albums, for example, they have, guitars, layered, or voices layered, or keyboards layered. Well, I'm doing the same thing. I'm layering all those things, but usually in these kinds of albums, there's a drum part.
Right.
There's one drum part, and maybe it's percussion or little things, but most of the time it's just one drummer playing one drum part. And in this case, it's me playing a bunch of different drum parts, layering, panning, coming from the left, coming from the right, coming from up, just trying to make it really luscious with the drums, with completely different sounds. Sometimes I would have, 8, 9, 10 different drum sets doing different things on one particular tune. And you cannot really tell, oh, that's 10 drum sets. It just sounds like a monster drum set, and that was my goal, just to make it really, really, drum centric, but there's pretty much there's no drum solos or anything. So it is just something that hopefully a jazz musician can appreciate, and also the jazz musician's uncle that has nothing to do with music can appreciate as well. That's my goal.
know, you have some very, very important special guests on this record, and they contributed to this. Meshell Ndegeocello, Trent Reznor, Beca Stevens, Dave Matthews. You have a hodgepodge of eclectic funk, rock, jazz musicians that contribute to this, and your wife is on this too.
Mm-hmm.
How did you weave these musicians into this album?
In terms of musically speaking?
Yes.
Well, you know, I wanted to keep, I mean, because what I did was I asked each one of them personally, because I had a personal connection with everybody, pretty much. Even if I had never met them, I knew somebody that knew them, and that person that knew them knew me pretty well, so they could vouch for me. You know, for example, in Dave Matthews' case, I did meet him. We did with Bella Fleck. We did a trio gig opening for Dave Matthews and it was when he's doing his duo with Tim Reynolds.
Right.
So we opened for him, and then because they're just a duo, they asked if we wanted to sit in with them. Of course we did, and we played a couple of songs, and he was super cool. I mean, Dave Matthews just a super cool, quirky guy, and you know. But that was it. I thought, well, it was so cool that I met him, but that's it. My relationship with Dave Matthews is not something that you know, it's in the forefront of my everyday life. But then when the time came to do this project, I thought, you know, I met him. I'm sure he watched Birdman, because that's one really good point of reference for a lot of people now. If they don't know my solo work, or that I played with Pat Metheny and Chick Corea, or all my other work, at least there's Birdman, you know. So, oh yeah, I love Birdman. So I asked Bella Fleck, do you think Dave would be into this? And then Bella gave Dave my number, because, you know, obviously I wasn't asking Bella for Dave's number. And then Dave wrote me, you know, this was during the pandemic, which was the cool thing, that a lot of people were not that busy, you know. So he wrote to me, and I told him, and he said, oh yeah, let me think about it, and then he sent me a song. So things like those were incredibly fortuitous, you know, that they happened the way they happened. Trent Reznor also, you know, he was at home working on a film score, and he had the time. You know, right now, I don't think this would have happened. So once I started getting the songs, I started just trying to keep the integrity of the songs. I mean, I would never chop lyrics or anything like that, but I would do a lot of editing, and I would just leave the voice alone sometimes, and then start working from the bottom up. Like, okay, what is this song? And I would try to find a different harmony for it, different arrangement, and it would just kind of, because there were such good songs. Some of them were pre-existing, like in Dave Matthews' case, Ihi is the name of the song, and I heard it, and I was like, well, it's a great song. It sounds great. How can I completely change it, you know, without messing with the integrity of it? And that was a challenging thing most of the time, to keep the soul of the song intact and rework it completely at the same time. And I was incredibly nervous to mess around with songs from these people, you know, because they're master songwriters, and the song is something, it's like a baby, you know, it's something very, very personal. So I wanted to do it justice and create something that they would be like, oh my God, I never thought my song could work in this completely other context. It's doing like a remix in a way, you know, where you hear your material worked in a completely different way. And I was nervous like hell to send, because it was not a collaboration, in the sense that, okay, you send me your song, and then I do a little bit of work, send it to you, and then ask you what you think. No, the way I did it is I finished completely, you know, the process. It was like ready for the record, basically, and then I would send it back and hope that they would like it. So luckily, in every single case, they really liked it, and they responded really well to it. And it was a dream come true. That to get text or emails from Dave Matthews and Trent Reznor and Meshell Ndegeocello telling me that they love their
I can imagine.
songs. Yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, Trent Reznor was just inducted a couple of years as a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and Nine Inch Nails, what they have contributed to rock and roll, the canon of this music, been remarkable. And for him to reach out to you to a project like that's another notch on.
Oh, man.
That's another notch on your resume right now.
Yeah, because I mean it's a notch for me, not for them.
Right.
And that's the amazing thing. Because it's like when you marry up or you marry down. I mean, they marry down completely.
Right.
But I think they appreciate my musicianship at least. And luckily these people are so well known and so famous that I think they can afford to just do something for the sake of the music.
Right.
Without what's in it for me. So I really appreciate them doing this kind of stuff.
I love your band. I love Yuki, love Lex, love your wife. They add really the organic part of this project, and seeing this live, everybody knows their role in this. And how did you select these musicians out of, you could have called anybody, but these were 3 core people in your band. Yeah,
well, because the nature of the album is so different, the nature of the music is so different, I wanted to have people that I, admire for what they do, but that were not really tied to my jazz world. Because I wanted a completely fresh approach to this. The only person, of course, Thana Alexa, my wife, obviously, we've worked together a bunch and we know each other really well, and I just could not think of anybody else that could do this gig, because there's tunes from men, women, in English and in Spanish.
Yeah.
And even though she's not 100% fluent, she speaks enough, and her pronunciation is really good because she speaks Croatian, and phonetically Spanish and Croatian. I can also pronounce Croatian, even though it's incredibly hard to speak grammatically speaking. The pronunciation, it's not that difficult for me. So I couldn't find, or I couldn't think of anybody that would serve the music better than her. And then Yuki, Big Yuki, he's just a master of sounds. Of course, I mean, he has all the technique and all the harmonic knowledge and everything, but it's very hard sometimes to find people that really know about sound. And this album has so many layers of sound that I needed somebody that really, because I could have found like a great piano player that plays Rhodes and a keyboard, but that's a different discipline altogether. To be really immersed in the world of sound and synths and modules and pedals is a different world, and Big Yuki is a master of that. And Lex also, I didn't want like somebody that would be playing just super virtuosistic bass that would always need to solo. I wanted somebody that had all the knowledge, but that also would be a completely supportive bass player in a supportive role that made the music groove. And Lex is amazing at that and can also play keyboard bass. And that also has knowledge about Ableton and tracks, and because we're playing with tracks, so to make the whole sound bigger, Because that's the other thing. I was trying to figure out how to translate what's on the record to live. And we could have done it more the jazz way, but it would have sounded too different, I thought. So I wanted to have for people to, if they're not going to have the experience of having, Trent Reznor, Dave Matthews, Meshell Ndegeocello, live, at least have the experience of, the bigness of the album anyway. You know, so it's been so much fun to put it together. It's been nerve-wracking, as it always is, to start a new project from scratch. But now that we have some momentum behind us with gigs and under our belt, and just, you know, gigs ahead of us, you know, it's just getting so much better all the time.
You know, I'm sitting here in your studio, and we talked a little bit earlier about the role of scoring music and hearing things cohesively through a scene. How easy and how hard is that? Because, you know, when I looked, I was telling you, I saw the documentary on Magic Johnson, and I was telling you, Flying Lotus and Terrence Blanchard, they added life to some of the scenes. And your role when you're looking at scenes, are you interpreting how it can be dramatic, how it can be somber, how it can be the different moods? How do you deal with that?
Well, there's different ways of going about it. I mean, a lot of times they will provide you with temp music, source music, so that you get an idea of what they're going for in a specific scene. And that can be helpful, but also it can be misleading. For example, they can send you temp music that has a specific sound palette. So, for example, they send you something with has a lot of synths, electronic sounds. So then you think, oh, okay, so they like that, and that's what they kind of going for. So then you do a scene or a whole thing with that kind of mentality, and then they, call you back, and they said, yeah, but we're not really into the synth thing too much. So a lot of times the work of the temping of the music is done by music editors, and sometimes the creators of a show don't even look at that, don't even listen to the music sometimes. So there's a lot of disjointed parts going on sometimes. So the best thing is to actually talk to the director, to the creator directly, and kind of bypass most of the temp music. And just talk to them what now this new thing that I'm doing, this HBO series that is going to come out in June, called the Anarchists. I get notes from the creator, about each specific scene, when it starts, when it should end, and they also send me the temp, and he says, this I like about the temp. I like the rhythm of the temp. I like the tempo of the temp, but do your own interpretation of it. So when that makes it a lot clearer, and then I can mess around with once we agree on what the sonic world we're going to live in, if it's going to be more synths, or it's going to be more acoustic instruments, or it's going to be drum heavy, or it's going to be string heavy. Once we kind of agree on that, then I can start working with those elements and start getting creative, because otherwise if you try to do what the temp music is telling you to do, then it can be very constricting. And in my experience, every time I've tried to follow the temp, most of the time they don't really like it that much. So it's better when I talk directly to the creators, and then I do my thing.
Scoring is completely different than leading your own ensemble. Leading your ensemble, there's requirements, like with this new record, the requirements that you have of your musicians. And with that, do you write around your musicians, or do you just write music and then okay, wait a minute, I think I have a guitarist that might want to play this part, or I think I might have a bassist that, how do you do that?
Well, every project is different, but yeah, for example, when I did my all-star album called 3x3,
right,
I completely wrote for them. I had John Scofield and Christian McBride in my head, and I was like, this is going to sound great for them. And then I had Lovano and Patty Tucci in my head, they're going to kill this. And then I had Brad Meldau and Matt Brewer, and I was completely writing for them. Then for Migration, same thing. I knew what they were capable of, so then I knew I could write anything and that they could, eat it up. In this case, with the new album, with Shift, it was very different, because I did everything here. I played all the instruments, I did all the production, and then, okay, now how are we going to play this? And then who am I going to get to play it? So it was very, very different process in this situation, because most of the time when I write the music, then we go to the studio and we play it with the band. Here I did everything, and that's why it's called Bad Hombre Volume 2, because the Bad Hombre projects, that what I intend for it to be a brand where every time you see that, it means that it's me as a mad scientist here, just doing my thing. And then we're gonna try to find a way to play it live. But in the case of this band, I really want to make a record with this band, you know. And I still don't know how we're gonna do it, or what music we would do. But I would love to, because they're such incredible musicians. I would like to have something that we all do together, not just me doing everything and then trying to recreate it with the musicians. So, you know, it's just so different from scoring, and also, you know, scoring is never for myself. You know, it's always for somebody else.
Right.
So you're always trying to satisfy somebody else's vision, and a lot of times, you know, they don't even know what they want. They know when they hear something they don't want, they know they don't want that, but a lot of times they don't know what they want until they hear it. You know, so for example, I did a movie, hasn't come out yet, and the director told me, okay, this scene, you know, it's very simple, piano, you know, it just lasts a few seconds. So, you know, I did a few versions, and he's like, no, I need it to be faster. Okay, so then I would speed it up, and no, it's too fast, and he didn't know how to explain it to me. And then I asked him, maybe send me a couple of songs that you like, that you think might go well in this scene. And then he sent me two things, and then I realized right away that both things had arpeggios. And I was like, oh, so what he wants is arpeggios. So then I did exactly the same thing I did in the beginning, but with arpeggios, and he's like, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah. So a lot of times they, you know, because they're not musicians, you know, they don't know exactly how to tell you what they want. So it's a little bit of it's a translation game. It's like, okay, if every time they tell me it's faster, oh, maybe they want just more action. And it might be the same tempo exactly, but just, you know, more subdivisions and arpeggio, things like those. So those tricks you start kind of learning as you go along.
COVID-19 hasn't been too kind to us. We've lost some very important heavyweights, some masters, and Chick Corea left us, and you had the honor of playing with him. And what's your take on Chick now that he's gone, and what does he mean to you as a musician, and what does he mean to the world of, I don't even want to say jazz music, because he did classical, he did all kinds of music. What does he mean to music?
Oh man, it's hard to put into words what Chick has done for music. I mean, not only for jazz, like you say, but for music, for musicians. And he really touched so many people all over the world from all walks of life. And that was the incredible thing when he passed away, just to see the outpouring of love from so many people that saw him in this context or in these 10 different contexts, and that were touched, because he was he was all about communicating on stage. You know, he was never into introspection. You know, he was all like, I'm doing this for you guys, you know, and he would really try to reach the last person in the audience and have them sing along and have them participate. The first gig I ever did with him was a bizarre gig in Miami for a private party of some Russian billionaire, I think. And it was Gary Burton's quartet and Chick's trio, and I was playing with Chick. And you know, it's hard to describe what was going on, but it was a big party, so everybody was drinking, and it was just kind of messy and loud. People were very rowdy. And it was in some private island, you know, close to Miami. The whole thing was pretty surreal. And people were not there to listen to us, you know, they were there to party. And then they announced us, and the first tune, you know, it was a disaster because nobody was paying attention, everybody was talking. And then he got on the mic and he said, okay guys, you know, do this with me. You know, and slowly he just started just bringing people in, and all of a sudden everybody was completely into what we were doing. So I was like, wow.
Geminis are good at doing that. I'm a Gemini.
Man,
master of communication.
Master of communication, and he could make everybody feel included, which to me that's one of my pet peeves with jazz a lot of times, that it's not a very inclusive music. It's like, I'm a super bad dude or a dudette, and I'm gonna just play my stuff. If you like it, great. If you don't, I'm still bad. You know? and to me, coming from rock and roll, you know, originally, to me that's crazy. You know, how can you not care about what the audience, you know, is feeling, you know, in the moment? So you have to, you know, give them a hand, and if you're playing complicated music, you have to bring them in somehow, you know, because it can be complex, but it can be communicative still. And the best example, somebody that I played with for almost 20 years, Pat Metheny. You know, we would play these gigantic places, and we would be playing in, you know, odd times and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, but the melodies were so clear that you could sing along to them, and you didn't know if it was in 7 or in 13 or in 4/4. It didn't matter. It was like, you know, when older people in Greece or in Eastern Europe are singing these super complex tunes in odd times. Do you think they know what time signature it is? They don't, and they don't care. It's just the melody is just right. You know, so well done that you can just sing it. And to me, that's a very important thing, you know, to have that line of communication with the audience. And Chick was the master of that, you know. And Chick personally, for me, he was my gateway into jazz. And it was funny because we just did the Chick Corea tribute at Lincoln Center, and I was talking to Dave Weckl, and I told him, you know, the Chick Corea Electric Band.
That's it. That band.
That to me was that's how I got into jazz. You know, because it had a lot of the rock elements that I liked. It had the big sound, the big drum sound, electric guitar, and, you know, backbeat, but they were playing all this incredibly complex music that, but still resonated with me. So I told him that. He was like, "Man, I had no idea," you know. And I told him, "Yeah, man. I mean, you were like, you know, the first jazz drummer I was really into." And then from there, I started just going backwards and backwards and backwards, as
Right.
a lot of people do. You know, I did not grow up listening to straight ahead at all. So I went in through the kitchen door and then worked my way
Right.
to the front door. And Chick, you know, did it all. You know, so his legacy, I think, will be very hard to put into words. You know how much it means to not only jazz history but music history in general.
Letting it all out, showing me the way.
Lyle Mays to me, you know, was a very important. Pat Metheny group was very important to me, because I mean there are times as an adult and even as a teen listening to his music, I was in different phases, and Lyle to me and still is one of my favorite keyboardists and great writer. And I don't think there's ever going to ever be another band like the Pat Metheny group. In fact, I said when he passed away that the Pat Metheny group was really one of the last fusion groups in jazz. The so-called fusion. We're talking like, and when I say that, I'm talking like Weather Report, I'm talking about Return to Forever,
Right.
I'm talking about what Pat and Lyle did in the late 70s, in the 80s and 90s. They carried what Chick did. And give me your take on Lyle now as, you know, as a musician, as a friend, as a composer. What was it about Lyle that set him from a lot of his contemporaries?
Well, to begin with, when I met Lyle, what struck me the hardest is just his brain. He was just kind of like a genius, you know. He was just out of this world in terms of just his brain power and, you know, what he liked doing. He liked, you know, doing coding just for fun and, you know, like invent video games. I remember he did once. He gave it to me and so I could play on my computer. It was, remember that Atari game Asteroids?
Yeah.
So he did that, but the asteroid was my face. So you would shoot at the asteroid and little my faces would just start exploding. I mean, it was hilarious. And one time, I remember he wanted to teach me how to play chess. And I was like, okay, sure, yeah, I'd love to. And then I started realizing how competitive he was. So, I mean, he just wanted to destroy me. We had a really funny relationship because I didn't know how competitive he was. And then we started shooting pool on our days off.
That was his love too.
That was his love. But when we started shooting pool, I was pretty good because I used to have a table at home in Mexico. So, you know, in my teens, I used to play all the time. So I had a decent level. And we were more or less, you know, the same, him and me. And then when I started beating him, he could not, he did not like that one bit. So then we would say, okay, let's meet at the pool hall at 8 tonight. And then when I got there, he had already been there for 5 hours, just playing with the other people and stuff. And of course, he started beating me immediately, and then he even went to the nationals and stuff. So he was a very determined guy. He was very funny, very quirky, eccentric, and just an insanely gifted musician, you know, with his very own voice. And I think he's always been underrated.
Always.
And
the solo records,
yeah.
I think people continue to sleep on. The first solo record, the self-titled one, and then the Street Dreams record, that second one he put out.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. That one and the one he did afterwards, the one with Jack DeJohnette and was it Mark Johnson? Yeah, that Fictionary. I think
Fictionary, yeah.
all his solo records were slept on.
But the people that really know, they know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the people that really know what he could do, they're like, man, Lyle is one of the all-time greats. And those records also are like his solo records.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, some of the most beautiful, you know, things I've ever heard. So when he passed away, it hit me really hard. I mean, I remember that day I was kind of like in shock, and then I met up with Chris Potter and Adam Rogers. We went to have dinner on that day, I remember. And then I came home and while I was parking the car, boom, I was listening to him in the car, and then I just lost it, you know, and I just cried for a while. And, you know, it's still hard to believe that he's gone, and also I had no idea he was sick, so, you know, I didn't get to
Right.
talk to him or say goodbye or anything.
Why do you think Because it seems like he didn't take everything he did seriously, because he was a master of everything. Why do you think? Do you think that the Pat Metheny group, it was time for it to just end, or do you think that Lyle was just, he was tired, he just wanted to do something else? And it's okay to do that. Monk did that at the very end of his career. He just stopped playing and he just.
I think Lyle was one of those guys that, you know, he had such a big brain that music was just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he liked doing other things that would challenge him, you know, in different ways. And another thing is the last tour we did was in 2010. And
The Way Up.
That was 2005.
Okay.
The Way Up was 2005.
Okay.
So the last tour we did, it was just a quartet reunion tour where we would be playing the hits, basically. Just Pat, Lyle, Steve Robbie, and myself. So we'll be playing quartet versions of a lot of the Pat Metheny group hits. And he really had a hard time on that tour.
Really?
Just in terms of what it takes, you know, for you to tour, you know, the traveling side of things. I think he loved playing, but just getting from one place to another, and the early mornings and late nights and sound checks and heat and being on the bus, sleeping in the bunk, you know, all those things I think didn't sit well with him. So I remember the last gig, he looked just tired, you know, and kind of fed up.
And Pat loves the road.
Yeah, Pat loves the road. Yeah, so you know, the road is not for everybody. And I guess when Lyle was younger, you know, he could do it, but later I think it just started getting harder and harder and harder. And Pat likes to hit hard. You know, it's not like, okay, let's do three gigs and then, you know, no, it would be like 6-7 gigs a week.
Yeah.
And long gigs and intense gigs. So yeah, if you're not into the traveling thing and long gigs and stuff, it's hard. It's hard on the body. So I think Lyle just kind of decided that he had enough, because he did so much.
Yes, he sure
and
did.
he wanted to pursue other things. And then unfortunately then he got sick, and I'm not sure how the last you know, months or years of his life went, because we were not really in touch too much, unfortunately.
That'll do it again for another edition of the Pace Report, reporting live here in the heart of New York City, Times Square. I'd like to personally congratulate and thank the talented Antonio Sanchez for his time. Look out for his new album, which is coming out in August this year, as well as look out for his upcoming tour dates. For more information on Antonio's upcoming tour dates or to order his upcoming CD, follow him on AntonioSanchez.com, as well as Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'd like to personally thank the staff and management in New Blue for their warm hospitality. I can't stress this enough, people. Please like, share, and subscribe to my videos here on YouTube as well as Vimeo, and leave comments. Also follow me on thepacereport.com for my weekly column as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Until next time, peace.